Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics and also a teacher, and of course, therefore, going to report on any major news that breaks in the world of education in the United Kingdom. And there's been a lot this week that I need to go through, including a last minute change of position from the Department for Education in terms of the impact on students in England. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the last time I was talking about the way that grades are being awarded this year for 16 and 18-year-olds, in various parts of the UK, but most particularly between England and Wales and then Scotland. And where I'd left that, it was a right old mess everywhere. And in Scotland, an awful lot of students had been downgraded. I was talking about the fact that an awful lot of disadvantaged students have been particularly hard hit. But after a week of the Scottish government, standing firm, they finally relented, and again, I'll just have to say credit where it's due. They have finally relented, and they've said they're going to use the teachers' predicted grades. Now, I'm not suggesting that that is the system they should have used from the start, but given that they failed to get the system, you can't get it perfectly right, but as right as you could get, and they found themselves where they were. It's a shame that it took students protesting on the streets to get us where we are, but it has gotten where we are. Now the political pressure was in England and Wales. And I've woken up this morning. This is very, very quick because the results for the A-levels are coming out tomorrow, which is your 18-year-olds. The GCSEs for 16-year-olds come out next week. And Gavin Williamson, who is the Education Secretary, has introduced what they're calling a triple lock system. So what this means is you're going to get your grades tomorrow. Now let's say you're not happy with those, and quite a lot of people will have good reason not to be happy with them because an awful lot were downgraded, some of whom may ended up have been fair, some not. So then what you can do is you can say, okay, if your mock exam results were better, you can use that. And if you don't like either of those, then you do your exam this autumn, which hopefully, the way it's sounding to me, won't be classed as a resit. They've said that it won't disadvantage you because they were trying to call it a resit, which is absolutely outrageous. Because anyone sitting their exams this autumn, it will be the first time they've ever sat their exam. That is not a resit by any stretch of the imagination. Now, this panic is interesting. It doesn't actually help the situation. It doesn't help. Now, Gavin Williamson did say that they can't use the teacher predicted grades like they've done in Scotland because it would massively inflate the number of top grades awarded. He said, the number of A's and A stars awarded, last year was 27%. This year, if we did that, it'd be 36%. Now, this is true. And we know that it would mean some students who wouldn't have got A's or A stars getting those A's or A stars. Absolutely accept that. But here's the problem. The current system is also deflating grades for students. So you've got to pick one. We can't come up, especially now that it's gone this far, we can't even come up with a close fit to what people would have actually got. You've got to pick one. Do you inflate or do you deflate? Now, I would argue a couple of things in terms of why it's better to go for the Scottish system. The first one I'm going to mention is that the grades at A-level are largely being used to compete with people from the same year. They're going to be used in the immediate term to compete for university places, to compete for jobs, and for apprenticeships potentially as well, but I'm not sure how well they're doing at the moment. And so you're competing with people who are in the same boat. Now, yes, your A-level grades are still important years later, but the fact of the matter is, no matter what the government did, anyone looking at A-level grades from awarded in 2020, they will always carry a stigma now. They will always carry a stigma. People will not really know the value of them. That's the problem. They may not, they may not know whether they're as valuable as they really were or less valuable and so on. So I think you have to pick one. The other thing is there's talks of legal challenges, and this is because it's not just that students in England are competing with each other for those university places. They're competing with people in Wales and people in Scotland. Now, at the moment, people in England, students in England, will be disadvantaged over their competitors in Wales and Scotland. In Scotland, because they've reverted to the teacher predictions. In Wales, come to this, because they have more modular and coursework-based exams, so they already had a lot of formal assessment done with which you could come up with more accurate predictions anyway. And what we know is, even though if we went just to the teacher predictions, yes, that would mean certain top grades have been inflated. What we know is the current situation means a deflation across the board, or in terms of the higher grades. The system that has been adopted at the moment disadvantages students from England. And they'll be competing for those university places, and the suggestion is that there could be legal challenges on that basis because they have been unfairly had their grades downgraded compared to the rest of the country with whom they are competing. So there is that situation. Now, when it comes to that, those modular exams in Wales, you think to yourself, so why don't we have that in England? This is where Michael Gove steps in. And we said at the time this is going to cause trouble. So we used to have a situation, now, when I was a relatively young teacher, we had something called Curriculum 2000 brought in. So A-levels used to be, as they are now, 2 years, you do your exams at the end of them. Then it changed. So you did exams throughout the course, including a set of exams at the end of, in January in your first year and at the end of the first year as well. Now, universities loved this. Universities don't just like going by teacher predictions because they know that they can be inflated, or they may not, or they may be they're not accurate. Whereas what universities loved was, okay, they had the teacher prediction, but they also had some actual exam results, because those students would have already, when they were applying for university, already had a year's worth of exam results. They knew how they were performing. Yes, now sure, you would expect with the maturation process and the improvements to exam technique for students to further develop, but nonetheless you had actual exam results to go on. In steps Michael Gove and says, no, this is no good. To which everyone goes, why? It's much better. No. We're changing that. So this is his legacy, really. But anyway, it is what it is. Now, in terms of why this system is interesting that they've adopted, but why also ultimately fruitless, the fact that the government have made this last-minute change shows panic. That panic shows that they are facing, and they are aware that they're facing, intense political pressure. So they've backed down to a certain extent. However, it's also worthless. I would be amazed if there are a substantial number of students who will benefit from having their mock exams. Because here's the thing. If you're a student who's going to eventually get a grade A at the end of the year, you're very unlikely to get a grade A in your mock exams. Because your mock exams are just what they say. They take place about half a year before your real exams, or a few months at any rate. Depends on exactly when they're taken. Sometimes they're taken very shortly after Christmas. Sometimes it's a good month after. Students will often not work as hard for those as they will the real one. Also, the mock exams tend to take place when you've sort of covered most of the exam content, the subject content. But before that intense period, focusing on exam technique and how to answer exam questions and all the rest of it, which are also important in developing your ability to do well in an exam. It is not uncommon for people to get 2 or even 3 grades worse than their final grade in the mock exams. To say nothing of the fact that some schools and colleges didn't do mock exams because before they closed, they could see the writing on the wall, and it seemed to a lot of schools and colleges it was better to focus on doing what they could with the students to prepare them than it did to do some mocks. And also different schools and colleges will approach mocks in different ways. Some of them embrace the idea of using it as a kick up the arse for students who are coasting a bit. Some of them want to use it to actually try and come up with something that will be a good predictor of the final grade. They use it for different purposes. So, but the point is that the mocks are going to be lower than even maybe downgraded predictions. They're useless. But they're under that pressure. And of course they're under that pressure because this is the sort of thing that is going to get those aspirational upper middle class Tory voters really upset, because their little Johnny is not going to get the results that they're expecting tomorrow. Now, that can happen in any given year, because if little Johnny didn't try very hard, or just, bless him, wasn't as bright as his parents thought it was, then they will get below their parents' expectations, and the parents will chunter a bit, but at the end of the day, they sat an exam. There's no real complaining about it. You can try, but there's no real complaining. They'll probably just blame the teachers. That's fine. But this year, that'll be different, because it won't be because little Johnny was lazy, and it won't be because little Johnny's teachers had it in for him. It'll be because the government cocked it up. And for some of them, it'll be true. For some little Johnnies, that will be quite correct. But all of little Johnny's parents across the country will just behave as if that is the situation. This is going to create a furore. And you would think in a situation like this, the government would mitigate the damage as much as possible. Surely that's what this is about, mitigating that damage as much as possible. This doesn't mitigate it by one iota. Because the mock exams are not something that's going to... I'd be very interested to see the stats on how many students ultimately decide to use their mock exam grade because it was better than what Ofqual have given them, the exam boards. Because I can't think it will be very many at all. I cannot think it will be very many at all. And yet, like I say, you've got the situation where they can just sit the exam in autumn, but that will be based on having had no tuition for over half a year. They're not getting anything special for this autumn either. They're not getting special classes put on. There's not been any preparation for that. There can't be. Colleges don't have the staff to do it. Government needed to have put that in place a long time ago, put the money in so that they could hire more staff to do those lessons. They haven't done that, so that facility won't be available. You know, but yeah, so what I would say based on this, something surely will have to change. Because like I say, the government they've announced this panic reaction. And this change, by the way, was not done in consultation with teachers' leaders or universities. They just did it. They just randomly brought it out without actually consulting with anyone. No one is happy. No one. No lobby group for any stakeholder in this process is happy at the moment. Universities have already been making their decisions because they already have the results. They don't wait till tomorrow. They got them last week. They've been making their admissions decisions, not based on this. And so there's a right old mess. But the government haven't actually improved the situation. They haven't reduced the political pressure. If anything, they've increased it because now people can see that the government are for moving, that they are for U-turning. The pressure will intensify, so there will have to be another change. And for my money, it's a bit stupid. I would have thought that the government would have wanted to avoid the climb down that the Scottish government had to make by preempting it. And I thought that's what this was when I first woke up and read it bleary-eyed until I realised I'd read it incorrectly. And actually, it's absolutely pointless. And they are going to have to move again. So there it is. Those are my very hastily arranged thoughts on the matter. I can imagine having to say something else about it before too long. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.